The call came at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right as Grandpa Morris was settling into his worn leather recliner with a turkey sandwich. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something." His daughter Rebecca's voice crackled through the phone, tight with that particular strain he'd learned to recognize over 63 years of fatherhood. Morris set down his sandwich, unmuted the television where Jeopardy was playing, and pressed the phone closer to his ear. "What's wrong, Becca?" "It's Emma." A pause. "She called my Educator of the Year award stupid yesterday. Can you believe that? 27 years I've been teaching, Dad. 27 years, and this is the first time the state has recognized me for anything. And my own daughter, your granddaughter, she just..." Rebecca's voice caught. "She didn't even come to the ceremony. Said she had dinner plans with Richard's parents." Morris felt something tighten in his chest. Not anger, exactly. Something older and sadder than that. "Where is she now?" he asked. "In her apartment, I assume, probably posting pictures of lobster thermidor or whatever fancy thing the Haverstons treated them to." Rebecca laughed, but it came out hollow. "I'm sorry, Dad. I shouldn't be dumping this on you. I needed to tell someone who would understand." After they hung up, Morris sat in the gathering darkness of his living room, his sandwich forgotten. The blue glow of the television painted shadows across the walls, across the bookshelf where his own awards gathered dust. A Bronze Star from Korea, a 40-year service pin from the Postal Service, a World's Best Grandpa mug Emma had given him when she was 7. That Emma felt like a different person than the one Rebecca had just described. He thought about his granddaughter, 24 now, fresh out of business school and engaged to Richard Haverston III, whose family owned half the commercial real estate in the county. He thought about how she used to sit on his lap and make him read Where the Wild Things Are 7 times in a row. How she'd cried when he taught her to ride a bike and she skinned her knee. How she'd shown up at his door at 16, furious with her mother about some curfew, convinced that Morris would take her side because he always had. Morris had been a mediator his whole life. Between his 3 children when they were young and fought over toys. Between his wife and her sister during their decades-long Cold War over a borrowed cake pan. Between customers at the post office who swore their packages had been lost when they'd simply misread the tracking number. But this felt different. This felt like something that required more than his usual gentle diplomacy. He picked up his phone and called Emma. "Grandpa," she sounded genuinely happy to hear from him. "How are you? I've been meaning to call. Things have just been crazy with the wedding planning and work, and..." "Emma, sweetheart, I need you to come over tomorrow. Can you do that?" A pause. Tomorrow's kind of packed. I have a fitting at 2, and then Richard and I are meeting with the caterer at 4. "It's important," Morris said, in the voice he'd used approximately 6 times in her entire life. The voice that meant this wasn't a request. "Okay," Emma said quietly. "What time?" "Noon. I'll make lunch." She arrived at 12:15, still dressed for the fitting, a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than Morris's monthly retirement check. Her hair was different, he noticed, straightened and lightened, more polished, less Emma. "Sorry I'm late," she said, kissing his cheek. "Traffic on Westwood was insane." Morris gestured to the kitchen table, where he'd laid out chicken salad sandwiches, chips, and lemonade. Emma's favorite meal when she was 12. They made small talk while they ate. The wedding, it was going to be at the Haverston estate, 200 guests. Her job, good, busy, challenging. Richard, wonderful, supportive, excited about their future. Morris listened and nodded and waited. Finally, over the lemonade, he said, "Your mother called me yesterday." Emma's expression shifted, not quite a flinch, but close. "I figured she might. She told me about her award and about dinner." "Grandpa, look," Emma set down her glass with more force than necessary. "I know how it sounds, but you don't understand the whole situation. Mom's ceremony was at 4. We'd already committed to dinner with Richard's parents weeks ago. They're only in town once a month, and they're paying for the wedding, and it would have been incredibly rude to cancel on them." "Did you tell your mother that?" "I told her I had plans." Did you tell her you were proud of her? Emma looked away. It's not like she doesn't know I support her teaching career. Morris stood up slowly. His knees always ached after sitting too long, and walked to the bookshelf. He pulled down a wooden box Emma had probably never noticed before, worn smooth at the edges from years of handling. Let me tell you a story, he said, settling back into his chair. It's about another award a long time ago, back in 1953. He opened the box. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper that had yellowed with age, was a medal, the Bronze Star he'd been awarded in Korea. I got this for meritorious service in combat operations, Morris said. October 12, 1953, they had a little ceremony at the base, nothing fancy, just the company assembled, the captain reading the citation, pinning it on my chest. I was 23 years old, same age you were when you graduated college. Emma leaned forward, and for a moment, Morris saw the little girl who used to beg for his stories. My father was supposed to be there, Morris continued. I'd written him about it, told him the date and time. He owned a hardware store in town, your great-grandfather never met him, and he'd built that business from nothing during the Depression. Worked 7 days a week, open to close, but I thought, for this, he'd make an exception. Morris ran his finger along the medal's ribbon. He didn't come, sent my mother instead with a note saying he couldn't close the store on a Saturday. Saturday was his busiest day. He was proud of me, the note said, but business was business. Grandpa, I'm sorry, but… Morris held up a hand. I'm not finished. I came home from Korea 6 months later, got a job at the post office, met your grandmother, had your mother and her brothers, and every single year on my father's birthday I made sure I was at his house, with a gift, with a card, being the good son. He closed the box gently. And you know what? Every year he found a way to make me feel like my presence was less important than something else. A shipment that came in, a customer who needed help, an inventory that couldn't wait. For 37 years, Emma, I showed up. I kept trying. I kept thinking maybe this time he'd really see me. Emma's eyes were wet now. What happened? He died, Morris said simply. Heart attack in the store, between the hammers and the paintbrushes. And I never got to ask him why I wasn't enough. Why nothing I did ever warranted closing the shop, rescheduling a meeting, inconveniencing a customer. He leaned forward, looking directly into his granddaughter's eyes. Your mother spent 27 years in classrooms with broken air conditioning and outdated textbooks, shaping young minds for barely enough money to pay her mortgage. She stayed late for parent conferences. She bought supplies with her own money. She cried over students who dropped out and celebrated the ones who made it to college, and the state finally recognized her for it. They said, Rebecca Chen, you matter, your work matters. Morris's voice was quiet but firm. And her daughter, the girl she raised alone after your father left, the girl she worked 2 jobs to put through private school, the girl she supported through every dream and heartbreak, her daughter said that moment was less important than lobster with future in-laws. Emma's face crumpled. It wasn't lobster, it was Chilean sea bass. Despite everything, Morris almost smiled. Emma. I know, she pressed her palms to her eyes. I know, Grandpa, things with Richard's family are so complicated. They have all these expectations, and his mother is very particular about protocol, and I'm trying so hard to fit into their world, and Mom she looked up. Mom doesn't get it. She thinks I'm being shallow or materialistic, but I'm not. I'm just trying to build a life with the man I love, and his family is part of that package. And your mother, she's not part of your package anymore. That's not fair. No, Morris agreed. It's not. None of this is fair. Not to you, not to your mother, not to the Haverstons who expect you to dance to their tune. But Emma, sweetheart, you get to decide what kind of person you want to be in all this. He stood again, and this time Emma stood with him. He took both her hands in his. I can't tell you what to do, you're a grown woman, but I can tell you what I learned too late. The people who love you shouldn't have to compete with convenience. Your mother's award wasn't stupid. It was her life's work, recognized, and you weren't there. Emma was crying openly now. I messed up. Yes. I don't know how to fix it. Morris pulled her into a hug, and she collapsed against him the way she used to when she was small and the world felt too big. You start by being honest, he said. You tell her the truth, that you were scared of disappointing Richard's parents, that you made a choice based on fear rather than love, that you know what that moment meant to her and you're sorry you missed it. You don't make excuses. You don't explain it away. You just apologize and mean it. Emma nodded against his shoulder. And then, Morris continued, you decide whether you want to keep living your life afraid of disappointing the Haverstons, or whether you want to build a marriage where your voice matters as much as theirs, where your family is respected as much as Richard's, where you don't have to choose between the people you love. He pulled back to look at her. Your great-grandfather made me feel small my whole life. I don't want you to make your mother feel the same way, and I don't want you to wake up one day, 30 years from now, and realize you've spent your whole marriage apologizing for where you came from. Emma wiped her eyes. Richard's not like that. He's good to me. Then he'll understand when you tell him that from now on, you need to balance both families' expectations equally, that your mother's achievements matter as much as his mother's dinner parties, that you're not just joining his family, he's joining yours too. They stood in the quiet kitchen for a long moment. Finally, Emma said, will you come with me to apologize to Mom? Morris shook his head. This one's yours, sweetheart, but I'll be here when you need to talk about it afterward. Emma left 20 minutes later, her makeup smudged, her cream dress wrinkled from the hug. Morris watched from the window as she sat in her car for 5 minutes before finally starting the engine. He didn't know if she'd go to Rebecca immediately or if it would take time. He didn't know if his words would stick or if the Haverstons' influence would ultimately prove stronger. He didn't even know if Emma and Richard would make it, or if this was just the first crack in a foundation that wasn't as solid as his granddaughter believed. But he knew he'd said what needed saying. He'd told the truth that had taken him most of his life to learn, that love without respect is hollow, and that the people who truly care about us shouldn't make us choose between them and everyone else. Morris picked up the bronze star and looked at it one more time before wrapping it back in tissue and returning it to its box. Some awards you earned in a moment, others took a lifetime. He hoped Emma would figure that out sooner than he had.